we were able to interview Mikey Muhanna, and Mikey is the founder of AFKR, which is a new digital space, and also has a physical space, where they're bringing together people who are interested in the Arab world, Arab history, culture, science, and everything else, and trying to create a community of folks to get really curious in a really open-minded way about what's happening in the Arab world and where we should go. Very, very compelling interview, and we want to encourage our listeners, obviously, to check out the AFKRA website, which is AFIKRA.com, AFKRA.com. So let's listen to Mikey.
Yeah, just quickly, AFKRA means come to think of it in Arabic. That's the word it says, come to think of it. Or by the way. People use it also, by the way, AFKRA. All right, let's listen to Mikey Muhanna.
And this is Jess Ghannam with ArabTalk, and we're really delighted today to be able to speak with Mikey Muhanna. Mikey is the founder of AFKRA, and AFKRA is this really new, interesting space that is being developed in the Arab world for engagement, I would say. But I'm going to let Mikey describe it for us. We're speaking with Mikey from beautiful Beirut. And Mikey, first of all, thank you for agreeing to speak with us today. But I think the first and foremost, we need to ask how you and all Beirutis are doing right now after just the devastation recently. How you all doing?
Well, first, thanks so much for having me. This is an honor to be on the program. It's a tricky question. It's one day at a time, 1 hour at a time. We are a resilient bunch in Beirut. That includes Lebanese and non-Lebanese alike, obviously. So this city is built with lots of different folks: Palestinians, Syrians, Lebanese, Bangladeshi, Filipinos, Armenians, Sri Lankans. There are lots of really, really tough people who make the city what it is, and so one day at a time.
So we're always thinking about you. You know that, and I will say something. You when I asked you this once before, you said, we're looking forward to come to Beirut soon and be able to spend some time with you. So I know all of us feel that.
Yeah, ahla wa sahla, as we say. Inshallah, you guys can come and enjoy the food and enjoy the craziness of our sort of of our streets and our way of life. So
right.
Hopefully one day soon I'll be able to welcome you.
Yeah, inshallah. So, but that actually is a good segue to AFKRA. You're the founder of AFKRA, and when I heard about it and read about it, it was truly interesting to me from the perspective of what's happening in the world and what's happening in the Arab world, Gulf, North Africa. So, take our viewers and our listeners through your process of how you came up with the idea for AFKRA.
Sure, yeah. The idea really started when sort of outside the Arab world entirely. So I was a public school teacher in New Orleans, and I built this nonprofit focused on teaching curiosity to kids who had dropped out of the public school system or public universities, first generation college kids who had just made it into college. They were trying to be the first in their first generation in their family to really make it. And they were dropping out. And I realized I was building this curriculum around getting them back into career jobs and getting them back into being sort of productive members of their societies and communities and citizens. And as I was building that curriculum and that program, I realized the centerpiece of it was reteaching them how to ask questions deliberately that resonated with them, that were actual self-expressions of who they were, and giving them the skills and the will to answer them in a meaningful way. And so I had built this program and became really obsessed with this idea of how to reteach adults and young adults how to be curious. I had rolled off that project and moved to New York and became more interested in sort of applying that same pedagogy to the Arab world and really applying it to myself. I grew up in the Middle East and knew a fair amount about it, but realized that I wasn't deeply curious about the Arab world. It's music, it's architecture, it's poetry, it's literature, it's economic policies, it's geology, it's all these different things. I didn't really know much about it, and I realized that it was a function of my own sort of dilapidated curiosity. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to build this community of friends who are going to simultaneously inspire each other to ask questions and answer them, and try to create this space that was unlike any other space that I had access to. One that was unquestionably focused on the Arab world, but never just a social event. It wasn't about partying with each other or sort of celebrating our shared identity. And it wasn't about political activism or calls to action.
Right.
And so I wanted to create this third space, one where we didn't have to have an identity card. It wasn't an Arab student organization. There was no identity requirement to be there. We weren't celebrating some identity. So that I definitely didn't want. And I definitely didn't want a place where we were saying rhyming sentences with exclamation marks. I wanted this third space where we were asking questions, sentences that ended with question marks, where we scratched our heads and said, I don't really know the answer to that, but give me a second. I'm going to go do some research. And that exercise is an exercise in humanity, right? They would call it the humanities for a reason.
Right.
So I wanted us to sit together in a community and exercise our shared humanity and start to say, okay, we care about this region, but what do we really know about it?
Well, that's a really compelling answer, Mikey, because, having traveled and taught and worked in the Middle East myself for so many years now, I don't know of any space like this myself. I mean, we tend to be in the Arab world a bit more siloed in these political spaces, these religious spaces, or, and the idea of a commitment to curiosity, independent of whatever political, religious, identity card you may want to bring, sounds really compelling to me, especially within the current climate of what's been happening in the Arab world. And I don't know if I want to go back to Andalusia and Granada in terms of the trajectory of our region and where we are today and how AFKR fits into that, although I think that's a good question. But let's just take it from the Arab Spring forward in terms of how it unfolded for you and how you got to this place and how it fits with what's happening in the Arab world right now.
Yeah, so I think, AFKR is 6 years old. And just to also just give a little context for folks on the call who might not be familiar with the word, AFKR is a shortening for ArabTalk, and which in translated, it's a term that the best translation for it is come to think of it.
Yeah.
And so that's really the essence of what we're doing. We're trying to create opportunities for people to say, I'd never really thought about that. Now on second thought, let me go do some more research. So we've been around for 6 years. I think that a big part of this movement was, it was a selfish choice on my part because I wanted access to this space.
Sure.
If this space existed already, I wouldn't have felt the need to create it. It was mostly I wanted to have a community of nerds who just wanted to understand this region that they claimed to care about.
Right.
And I knew these conversations were happening in the academy. I knew they were happening in academic circles, but those circles are by definition really exclusive. Just because the nature of the academies. And so I wanted to have a really open discussion that required people to do some work themselves and really bring what they what they found to the table and say, okay, this is what I found. I might be wrong. I might not have gotten this 100% right, but this is a start. Hopefully somebody can add to this and we can slowly ping pong to some capital T truth eventually.
How has the reception been so far? I mean, 6 years, the last 6 years has been, to put it mildly, a very dynamic, chaotic, difficult time in the Arab world. How has the reception been so far from your standpoint?
Well, I mean, we started with a group of 15 people on a rooftop in Brooklyn, and now we have, the community is about 20,000 folks around the world.
Wow.
Folks in the Arab world, folks in Europe, folks in throughout the Americas, and the response. What I love about the calls, what I love about the room, there's this room, this global room that we've created, is that, especially now because we're hosting all of our events online, is that it gives us an opportunity. This sounds very cheesy, so trigger alert, but it gives us an opportunity to see each other.
That's cheesy, but really beautiful.
It's really beautiful. Yeah. And so to sit on the call and have an artist,
right.
Or like here's an example. So like Zaina Arafat is a writer based in New York right now, Palestinian American writer. She just published her first novel, and I interviewed her a few weeks ago. And on this call were folks who are a lot of different levels of Arab, quote unquote Arab, right? Where the word Arab shows up in their identity, the paragraph about their identity, it varied. Right? Some that didn't show up at all. Some it was the first word, and demographically also really different age groups. Some people calling from Indonesia, some people calling in from Berlin, some people calling in from Baghdad, some people calling in from Khartoum, some people calling in from the Bay Area, from Detroit. So it allows us to be on a call together and to hear each other's questions.
Right.
To understand, again, very cheesy, but to understand what is this internal architecture of each other's brains? What do you find interesting about this?
Yeah.
And to see somebody say, Zaina, this book of yours clicked with me. It bounced off me in a very specific way. And to hear somebody else who is voluntarily entering this room have a completely different response is it's such a powerful experience.
Yeah. And it's
really powerful.
It sounds powerful, and I'm going to give you a pass on cheesiness because it's actually really beautiful, because seeing each other as Arab, literally and figuratively, and all of the complexities in terms of where we've landed, whether we're refugees or generationally a little bit removed from the Arab world, actually having that opportunity in that space, not only does it not exist, but I think contributes to many, if not, I'll just say many of the difficulties that we're all struggling with right now. So this, it's pretty amazing.
And the fact that one of the really powerful things about AfKR, and I'd say one of the things that make sort of is refreshing to people. For me, it was really refreshing. It's an important part of it, is that there is no identity requirement. It's not a community for Arabs. This is a crucial point. It's a community for folks who are interested in the Arab world. And once you remove that litmus test,
it becomes much more interesting.
It becomes much more interesting, and it allows people to let go of this internal battle they may be having with how closely they want to hold that word to themselves.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they can define themselves by their brain,
right,
and their interests.
Right.
Like there's a quote, one of my favorite Biggie lines, Notorious B.I.G., one of my favorite lines from one of his songs is, "Tell me what your interests are, who you be with."
Exactly.
And that's all I care about. Yeah. I care about what are your interests and who are your people. That's it.
I wish you had come up with this a long time ago. But we're really grateful that you came up with this and that you're bringing this to bear right now at this particular historical moment, Mikey, because, we could continue this discussion for a very long time, because I think this particular historical moment that AfKR has, avails itself to is so necessary and needed. So let me ask you a question. I know that we're going to have our viewers and listeners say, well, how can we connect with Mikey? How can we connect with your community? Well, there's no litmus test. There's no identity card. So how do you get connected?
Sure. The first easiest way to get connected is to go to our website. Our website is, I'll spell it out. It's AFKR.com. And the way to spell that out is AFIKRA.com. And on that website, you can do a lot of things. So one, you can sign up for one of our 3 online events. So if you go to AFKRA.com/RSVP, you can sign up to attend these Zoom calls. They happen every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. If you are more of a social media person, our Instagram page is highly active and we're constantly posting content on there. If you're into YouTube and podcasts, our podcast is really popular. It puts all of our events, it repackages all of our events and posts them there. So on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts, if you search the AFKR podcast, you'll find it. And, YouTube, if you go to youtube.com/AFKR, you'll see the videos of past events there too. So the idea is we are trying to build a public library in a region that doesn't have public libraries.
Right. Right.
And doesn't have them. And if they do have them, they are very rarely built democratically and built communally.
Right.
And that's what this is. We're trying to build a communal library that tells the story and the histories and the cultures of this region defined very broadly.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot for one last question. Yeah. And it made me think about redefining what it means to be an Arab.
It's a great question.
I mean, it seems like this is a opportunity to challenge old structures, older ideas, maybe more hardened ideas, less challenge, more ideas that really haven't been challenged on what does it mean to be an Arab.
Yeah, let me say something first before I sort of try to address it directly. People often say we want to question the dominant narratives about the Arab world.
Whatever that means, right?
Whatever that means. And they tend to say it that way. They phrase it that way. It's important for us to, quote unquote, question the dominant narratives about the Arab world. To which I respond, absolutely. What's your question?
Exactly.
Because this is an active process.
Right.
This is an active process. Absolutely, we should question it. What's your question? All right. So, shall we be questioning what the definition of Arab is? Absolutely. But there are a bunch of secondary and tertiary questions that need to be asked.
Exactly.
Around what does it mean now? What does it mean in different locations? What does that mean to certain generations? What does Arab mean to Armenian populations in Syria? What does Arab mean to folks in Upper Egypt? What does Arab mean to the Amazigh population? What does Arab mean to immigrants who left Iraq and moved to the States? And what does that mean for them? What does it mean for Arab Jews who moved to Israel? Or what does it mean for a lot of people? What does this word mean now? And what does it mean 100 years ago? What did it mean 700 years ago?
That's right.
So there is so much information that just requires some digging. And a lot less hand waving and a lot more page turning. Right.
And the reason, one of the reasons I really like what you said is we're really good at challenging the dominant narrative, but then that's the goal. That's the end point, to just challenge it without going to the next step, which is, okay, now what? What do we do with that? It's like, okay, we had a great demonstration. We called out our demands. Now what? What's next?
What do you want to know? What do you want to know?
Exactly.
That's the point. Anyway.
So anyways, that's really a compelling analysis, Mikey. And listen, we've been speaking with the founder of Mikey Muhanna. Mikey is the founder of AFKR. He's given us really a compelling call to everybody, not just Arabs, to join this community that is now both online and in person. But I know that the in-person stuff is a little bit more complicated right now. The website is www.afkra.com. And we want to encourage our viewers and our listeners to check out the website. Mikey, really, congratulations. This is really something really exciting, and we want to applaud you for the work that you're doing. Really, well done.
Thank you so much. And also, you are going to be coming on the Conversation series very shortly. And so I'm excited to be able to interview you. And it is a pleasure to speak to you, Jess. I really, really have enjoyed it a lot.
Trust me, the pleasure was more mine, really. So our best wishes to everybody in Lebanon and especially Beirut. And we look forward to visiting you soon.
Thanks so much.